Right, I think we'll make a start. Thanks for joining our webinar this lunchtime. In this session, we're focusing on the live Innovate UK Women in Innovation Award and how to write a winning bid. My name's Laura Hill and I'm Project Manager of the Innovation Grant Mentoring Programme. The Innovation Grant Mentoring Programme provides innovation business support, which is fully funded by Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex County Councils. And our aim is to increase awareness to innovative businesses in the region around research and development funding. And we also offer bespoke funded, fully funded innovation mentoring and bid writing coaching support, which helps businesses working towards innovation funding calls. Which I'll go through that and talk about all that later on. But we'll be focusing on the live fund from Innovate UK, which is open at the moment. It's the Women in Innovation Award. And I know there's a lot of interest across the region around this particular fund. So we thought it'd be really beneficial to put together a webinar with a couple of our experts on the programme to talk to you around how to put together a winning bid. So to go through the agenda for today's session, please note that the session is being recorded and we will be sending a link out to the recording to everyone that's registered after the session. We'll go through the agenda now. We're joined by Sally Ann Baker and Laura King, who will be discussing what is innovation funding and what is innovation funding and the competition and how to on hints and tips about completing your application. We'll then move forward and answer questions. Please add these to the Q&A bar throughout the session. Then I will also, within the session as well, be going through the Innovation Grant Mentoring Programme and to give you a flavour of what we do to support businesses around innovation. So just to go through how we work in the webinar today, we'll be, as I said, we'll be sharing the slides and recording of the webinar to all those who have registered after the session. And if you've got any questions during the webinar, please add them to the Q&A section on the Teams on the Teams meeting. That should be on the top section towards the left of your page. We will then come back to you and answer the question if we can easily during the webinar. I've got Helen and Jade, who also work in the Innovation Grant Mentoring Programme, supporting the session today. To thank you to both of them. So they'll be answering any questions they can immediately get back to you on, but we'll be taking the main questions at the end of the session today. So actually, before we get going, what I'd like to do is we're just going to launch a poll to understand our audience. So Helen, are you able to launch that poll, please? We've got a couple of questions for you. So have you ever applied into innovation funding? And we also have another one around whether you've had success in those funding calls. So they should now be launched on the session. If you could please put your answers into the box. Just give you a few moments to finish answering this first poll.
Has everyone seen that the polls is in the chat?
Yes, it is. It's in the chat and it should also come up on the screen as well. So if you have it, if it's not on your main screen, it should be within the chat section. Thanks, Laura. Excellent. So I think we've got here, about 70% of people have applied into innovation funding on the call today. And then of those, about 63% were successful. So that's a really good number. Well done. So it looks like there are a lot of skills out there in terms of understanding innovation funding and how to put those bids together. But we hope that this session today will boost your skills and help you as you move forward into, and for those who are applying into the Women in Innovation Fund, hope that it supports your application there. But of course, this session is open. A lot of the information on today's session will be relevant to any funding call, especially from Innovate UK that you're applying to. So hopefully a lot of you will find this session beneficial today. So thanks for answering that poll. Right, so moving on, I'll just move on to the next slide. Okay. Right, so we're moving forward to the key talk for today. We've got Sally Ann Baker and Laura King. Thank you very much for coming to help us with this session today. Both Sally Ann and Laura King, Sally Ann Baker and Laura King are from Bidright UK, and they support our programme in delivering bid coaching support to businesses that come to us for one-to-one support on their innovation applications, innovation bid applications. So we're really pleased to have these experts in the sessions today to talk you through the process as you're considering the Women in Innovation Award or other funding calls that you may be approaching in the future. So I'll pass that on now to Sally Ann and Laura. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Sally Ann from Bidright UK. I think there's a lot of information there about me. I think main things are that I've been in charge of submitting lots and lots of bids. I think it's up to nearly 2,000 now. And I think obviously that's given me some insight into general things that go wrong or that go right, what kind of things need to be in place. So I think I have a good overview, and I think sort of summarizing that is that a lot of people tend to undersell themselves. That's generally the biggest thing we see, and particularly women, but not just women, that undersell themselves and don't put down key information. So I think that's the biggest learning that we have, is to make sure you're really selling yourselves, and that you don't have to be perfect. So that often we see that men will apply for anything, whether they think they have everything in place or not. Women will tend to look at something and think, well, I haven't got this, I haven't got that, not to apply. So I think our learning is that over many, many years, it is actually very difficult to predict who will and won't win. So we encourage people to apply, because it's always possible to win. And I see that we have 63% people on this call have actually won, which makes you the experts really. But we're going to try to add to that, just from our many years of experience of writing bids, to add to that. We've also done a lot of scoring of bids. So we've sat on the other side, and we see that not everyone is perfect. When they submit bids, things might be missing. They can still win, or funders will go back to them and ask for that information. But that typically when we are scoring bids, that many people will miss things out, or miss attachments, or miss things. And so you don't have to be perfect. You might think, well, I haven't got this, haven't got that piece of paper, haven't got this. You don't have to actually be 100% perfect. So I think that's our big learning from all the bids, if I can summarize it in that way. Sorry, that's very rambly. Laura, did you want to say a bit about yourself?
Yes, so I'm Laura King. Also got lots of experience on both sides of the fence as a bid writer and a bid assessor. I 100% agree with Sally Ann there in terms of, first of all, you've got to be in it to win it. Yeah. If you don't submit, then you don't give yourself any chance. And hopefully we will give you some tips from our insight into both writing and assessing that we can pass on to you. Particularly with this competition, I think one of the key things is the word counts. So hopefully we will give you some insight into how to maximise those, and how to put value into your responses to achieve those high scores.
Okay, thank you. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is just an overview of what we're going to cover. We cannot cover everything, but we're going to try and give you that information that you need to get started, because I'm thinking, you know, with 10 days to the deadline, that maybe some of you have got a plan, you've started, you know what you're doing. I'm hoping so, or maybe some of you are leaving it a bit more to the last minute, but this hopefully will give you an idea of where your strengths are, what you need to work on, where you need to start, and to actually be effective and efficient in writing the bid and submitting it. So we're going to go through what the awards are, what innovation is, how you can make sure you're eligible so that you don't waste time if you really aren't eligible, but how to be really clear about that, and how you can win basically, and some practical tips. Okay, so that's what we're going to go through. And we will also look at an overview of the questions, the finance, and the video that you have to do. So at the end of the session, you should feel, hopefully, that you know where to start or how to continue with your application. Could I have the next slide, please?
Yes, of course. Should we bring in the poll around who's applying in for the Women in Innovation Fund?
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
Helen, would you be able to launch that poll, please? We've got another poll for everyone. Just be useful to find out who's applying into the Women in Innovation Fund, or how many people are. You should be able to answer from your screen or via the chat as well.
Have we got any answers?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see that, Sally. Well, I can read them out. It's not.
I can't see.
I'm never sure whether the polls are shared across everyone or not. So we've got quite a few maybes. We've got an 83% maybes applying into the Women in Innovation Award, and 17% yeses. So it's great to see some positive, going for it, and some maybes. So hopefully we'll be able to help you and decide what to do during the session today. And then
go on.
And then we've got about, obviously for this fund, which I'm sure we'll go through, there's a selector from Innovate UK, which is really important to look at for this particular fund. And so we've asked the question, have you completed the Innovate UK selector for this fund? So 40% of those that are saying yes, I think, if you've got here, have completed that. So that's a really important step if you haven't already done that, or if you're considering applying into the fund, have a look at that selector, but we'll cover that in the session today. So that gives you a bit of background information about the audience. I'll go back and move on to the next slide.
Great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so a lot of you are undecided. So yeah, hopefully we can clarify that during today's session, and we hope to encourage you, because just a bit of inspiration here about some previous innovators and where this, why we've had to have this funding specifically for women. It's not that women are not innovators. We've got a long history of being innovators, but typically women make up only 12 to 18% currently of innovators compared to men. So this is not to say that women don't innovate, but maybe they're not coming forward with their innovations, or don't have the confidence, or whatever it is, that there are structural systemic issues. But there are many, many, many women innovators, obviously, in the past, forever, and in the current day. There are a long list of female innovators from before. So it's just that this funding is there to boost. It's women only, because it recognises that often women don't put themselves forward, so they need ring-fenced funding to encourage them to do so. Okay, could I have the next slide, please? So this is an overview of what you get and what it involves. It's up to £75,000 for a period of 12 months, and you also get 10 hours of structured business support. So this could be with business planning, finance, marketing, market positioning, looking at investment, general business support from a sector expert or from people that have expertise that will help you develop your idea and push it forwards. They're also asking that you be ready to commit to 4 hours of role modeling activity. So I wouldn't let this put you off. I mean, this might be things like writing a case study, appearing at meetings, principally letting your case study be used, disseminated to other people to encourage them. So this is 4 hours of activity that you give back to the project in exchange for getting the 75,000 and the 10 hours of business support. And obviously you will get a lot of PR recognition and support and networking through being involved with Innovate UK anyway, through all the other winners. The wider support of Innovate UK will help promote your idea. So obviously you have to be female founders, co-founders, UK registered SMEs. This is the overview of the funding. It's to encourage innovation or new products or products which are a significant change on something that's already on the market. Okay, could I have the next slide? So these are the criteria that you need to meet to apply. Female founder, business registered as an SME for at least 12 months, delivered in the UK, submitting one application only, and not having received previous funding under Women in Innovation Award, Young Innovators, Next Steps, or a Build Award. And the compliance with the minimal financial assistance, this is just if you've received a grant before, you cannot, the limit in any year is something like 300,000, 315,000, which would bar you from applying. But hopefully that doesn't apply to you because it's quite a high amount.
There's a declaration form that you need to complete with the submission on that. So that's something to be aware of.
Okay, so they're the criteria, and there is a selector that 40% of you have completed to decide whether you are eligible or not. They have some other desirable features, but these are the basic eligibilities. Okay, could we have the next slide, please? So, as we were saying, this is for innovators, that the product must be innovative, and Innovate UK have given some guidance about the sectors, which are advanced manufacturing, digital and technologies, and life sciences. So you do have to have a product that is within one of those sectors. If you go on the website, they split this down into quite specific areas, about 5 or 6 areas in each of those sectors, but those areas are quite wide. So if you're not sure whether you fit in, whether your product fits in, you could go on the website and just check, link to the industrial strategy. So for example, in digital and technology, we've got things like AI, that's a very broad. So anything to do with AI, cybersecurity, quantum, semiconductors, engineering, biology, advanced connectivity. So they're pretty wide, but just to make sure that your product does sit within one of those areas. Manufacturing is automotive, anything to do with automotive, batteries, aerospace, advanced materials, and agri-tech. But don't kind of rule yourself out, because I think the categories are very wide and you probably can fit, but you do need to be in one of those sectors. But digital, obviously it's a very, very wide sector, digital. There's a lot of digital innovation at the moment. So try not to rule yourself out. Try and look for reasons to rule yourselves in, but the product will have to be innovation, something that's not currently on the market, or a significant improvement on something that's already on the market. Okay, could I have the next slide? So this is just some examples, and although they are looking for innovation, it's not kind of a has to be something that no one's ever thought of before, life and death kind of situation. If this doesn't happen, it's going to be really bad for everyone. Some of the improvements are quite small, niche things, so like developing a plastic-free coating on things. Now, we can carry on without that. It wouldn't have a massive impact, but it does mean an improvement, and it makes things more sustainable. So that was a winner. Another one there from digital, an AI-enabled smart air brick. Again, it's probably not a game changer, but it is a significant improvement. Something that doesn't already exist. And then life sciences, there's something that's digital and life sciences, a digital health platform for diabetes management. So again, they're not things that they're not massive, but they are step changes, small step changes in the sector. So that just gives you a few examples. And if you're not sure, you know, maybe discuss with someone in your sector, but try and talk yourself into it rather than saying, well, looking for reasons not to do it. Okay. Could we have the next slide, please?
Okay, project
this
stage.
is over to Laura. Yes, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. This is looking at where you need to be eligible to apply into the competition. So the Women in Innovation Awards are designed for late stage startups. So it's not early ideas and it's not scale only activity. So they are expecting that you should be in the mid to late research and development stage, so where there is still some uncertainty. So in practical terms, they're expecting you to have a prototype minimum viable product or an early version. So a functional prototype, a beta platform, laboratory proof of concept. So some core functionality essentially. Early customer interest through pilots or some revenue generation, and a clear understanding of who the customer is and how you will create value. So clarity there on who is going to pay versus who's going to use the solution. Obviously that could be both, but that needs to be clear. And working towards significant investment. So active discussions with investors or venture capitalists, participation in an accelerator, a defined funding plan essentially. So the award is to reduce the remaining technical or commercial uncertainty and not start from scratch. Next slide,
just wanted to say, I wouldn't let you put about the investment, don't let that put you off at this stage if you're not sure about investment, because you just have to be open to it. There's not necessarily a commitment to uptake investment. You're not committing to take it up, but I think you have to be open because they do want people that can scale and grow, and doing that without investment might be tricky. But it's not, you're not, by applying for this, you're not committing. It's not a commitment to investment. You just have to be open to it.
Thanks, Sally-Ann. Okay, so how to apply. Well, as so many of you are probably familiar with this, so you do need to create an innovation funding service account or sign into your existing account. You need to use a professional business email address. You can't change the registered email address later on. And then you need to find the competition, so the Innovate UK Women in Innovation Awards, and select Start Application. And once you've done that, then that obviously will give you the questions, open up the questions. Our recommendation is that you work offline, and then when you are ready, so when you've prepared all your responses offline, then copy and paste them into the portal. And we'll come on to how to respond to questions, and we're going to look at some specific questions in particular, but answer all questions clearly and concisely, and complete all mandatory fields within the portal. And as you're copying and pasting things in, make sure you save it regularly as you work through the form. Can we go on to the next slide, please? And then obviously, well, it might sound obvious, but try to submit well in advance of the deadline, the day before, and then that can allow any last minute edits, but it avoids any technical issues as well. If you know that that's been uploaded and sent off, you do have to press submit for the application to be considered. It can't just sit in the portal. They won't download it for scoring, just sat in the portal. You need to give that commitment to submit. And then post submission, they will notify you through the funding service, and they will provide feedback after assessment. And yeah, to just set up the account as early as possible if you don't already have that set up, to avoid any potential technical issues. Okay, next slide. So how is the application scored? So each scored question will be assessed independently. So what that means basically is questions are normally scored on their own merit as standalone responses. So it's really important that you put relevant content in your response, so you are actually answering the question, because scores are based on the content written in that answer. There's generally not cross-referral between questions. So we always advise to repeat key information where it's relevant. Obviously the word counts are tight, so you don't repeat massive sections, but for consistency, it's fine to bring something in again rather than cross-refer. Answer every part of the question. So if the question has several sub-questions, make sure they're covered, because the scoring guidance is likely to follow the question format. So each assessor is likely to be given guidance which will set out each sub-point of the question, and the higher scores will be achieved through answering each element of the question. As I said, put the information in the correct question, not elsewhere. You can't rely on an assessor to search other answers to find missing information. So the applications will be scored by humans. They could be scoring multiple applications. One of the really easy ways of making it easy for the assessor to award you higher marks is to make sure that the answers are tied closely to the question, and the assessor's not looking all over the place for information, because you can't guarantee that they will do that. And that there is a YouTube video that you can watch that will give you more insight into how the scoring is carried out. So please have a look at that if you want to get a bit more into the scorer's mind. Can we go on to the next, please? So moving on to some actual tips of how to approach the application and how to pull together your responses. So before writing, make sure you read all the questions end to end. As an assessor, as Sally-Ann said, one of the things that we see is information not necessarily in the right question. So it sounds really obvious, but having a look at all the questions does then help you map out where each part of your response will go. What people tend to do is they'll start writing without looking through the whole question set, and then have information that would sit better in another question, in a different response. So read it all through end to end, identify which questions are scored and which are not scored. There's no weightings as such in the Women in Innovation question set, but there are scored questions and unscored questions. So key evidence and key examples really do need to go into the scored questions. Again, you can't, obviously the assessor should be looking at the whole submission, but the scored questions, I would think, are where the most of the emphasis is going to be. As I've said, they'll only score what is written in each answer, so you have to make it really explicit, make it really clear what you're saying, and good practice is to turn each bullet point in a question or each sub point in a question into a subheading. Even if it's a one-word subheading, it really just helps guide the assessor as they're reading through your submission. And as I said, their guidance is likely to mirror the question. So it forms kind of a checklist for them to see that you have addressed each point in the question. And this also links into that. Answer the points in the same order they are asked. So if you're asked to explain 3 different things in the question, make sure that you do it in the same order that they have asked you to. Again, it's just making it easy for the assessor to understand, and it's logical, and they don't have to go to the bottom of your response to find the information about the first point and the middle of the response. They're not moving around all over the place. So note the word limit and allocate words deliberately. Again, that goes back to keeping responses tight to the subheading, not going off on a tangent. There really isn't the space in this application to bring in generalisations and wider information. With 300 and 400 word responses, you do need to be keeping the information dense and concise, and ensure that it's really clearly attached to the question. So for example, if a 400 word question has 4 bullet points, I would suggest planning roughly 100 words per point. If one point that asks for evidence, so you could reserve a few more words for that section. As I've said, that makes it easier to score and it avoids missing marks. Generally, where marks are lost is where bullet points or sub-question points have been missed. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide.
Can I just add in there as well, try and go for easy marks first. Sometimes we see people missing out things like not saying that they've got a risk register in the risk question, or which we're going to go through later, but or not naming your staff members, or missing out that you've got links with a certain university. It's going for what you have got, not worrying about what you haven't got. Going for easy marks and it's sometimes stating the obvious, that you will get a mark for saying certain things, and not just don't say it because you think, oh, they'll know that. They won't.
Never make any assumptions about the knowledge of the assessor. You do really have to lay it out for them and make it really clear. Okay. So as we've said, and if you've looked at the question set, you will know that some of the questions are scored and some are unscored. So even though they're not all scored, they will all set context. So it is really important to make sure that you answer every question fully, including those that aren't scored. They will provide credibility to the assessor. So make sure that all your answers are consistent. So the non-scored questions are consistent with the scored ones. You're saying the same thing. You're talking about the same problem, the same innovation, same market, same ambitions, and don't contradict yourself within your responses, and don't bring new information in too late into the application. As I said earlier, don't rely on non-scored questions to carry key content, critical evidence, critical information, put that into the scored questions. So you can't control what the assessor reads first, but you can control that your application makes sense, it's all consistent, all your numbers that you might refer to, all the evidence, it's all creating the same picture and giving the same message across the whole application. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a quick question overview. So there are 14 unscored questions, which is starts from question 1, basically. The main question in the unscored questions that you need to be mindful of is the licenses. Licenses need to be in place. You need to have the correct licenses in place on this particular competition. The 10 scored questions, they start from question number 14, and they include the problem, the benefits, the idea, the design, and we are going to look at some of the scored questions, 3 of the scored questions in more detail to give you some tips on how to approach those. There is a video pitch, which is 3 minutes. So in that you'll need to cover your idea, your growth ambition, and why you should win. So with that video pitch, you've got another opportunity to sell yourself. One thing that I've definitely found when working with organisations to support them with their competition applications is that quite a lot of people can easily talk about their idea. So hopefully this will give people an opportunity that are confident in talking about their idea, an opportunity to put it across in a different format rather than just the written format. I suppose people can go either way. They're strong at writing, maybe not necessarily as good at speaking. So it gives everybody an opportunity, I think, to cover their ideas. Then there's the section on finances, which we will also go through, and then just a sort of rationale for those unscored questions. So they do allow you to put in more detail. So it gives an opportunity to include factual information. You can explain some of the project background, but all your evidence, statistics, all your rationale for the actual problem. So that should go into the scored questions. Okay.
Can I just say there's an error? There was an error that question 12 is also scored. I had noticed. It just said from it's come off. Yeah, but question 12, which we're going to go through later, is actually scored. In case anyone noticed that. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Okay, so just some more some top tips before we do go into those questions. So think like the assessor and write to score. So answer the question exactly as you're asked. As I've said, I can't sort of stress this enough as an assessor on lots of big commissioning rounds. Use the bullet points, really guide the assessor through and answer them in the order that they're asked. Evidence every key claim. There's a saying in the sort of bid writing sector of say it, prove it. So use data, use customer insight, testing results, credible published sources. If you can't evidence it, it's a generalization. It's general, so it's unlikely to score. You need to personalize it and substantiate what you're saying. Back up your claims. That's really important to get the higher marks. Again, use the word count wisely. Light answers rarely score well, and generally that is because if the word count is 400 words and you're only writing 200 words, the likelihood is that you've not answered every part of the question. So with the word counts as they are, I think that you will need to use the full word count to get the higher marks, to get all the information in that they're asking for, and don't cross-refer between answers, repeat important points. Again, and each answer will be scored on its own merit, so make sure you're not cross-referring where possible. Next slide, please. Consistency, again, the same problem, customer and any numbers, they need to be consistent throughout. So any data that you bring in, any numbers that you've got from your own results, make sure that they are clear and you're using the same set of numbers, because that would just create more questions in an assessor's mind. If there's two different sets of numbers, it's which set is the reliable set, why is the two different sets? So please check all numbers and make sure they are consistent. Write clearly and accessibly, so plain English, short paragraphs, use headings, bullet points. Assume the assessor doesn't know your business or your sector. Panels can be made up of different experts with varying backgrounds, so you can't make any assumptions on prior knowledge. You need to write it so it's clear and it's understandable from what you've put into your response, and it's not relying on anything outside of the response. So focus on innovation and learning. It's an innovation competition, it's not a growth or a marketing bid, so obviously focus on those elements. And as I said, if you can, if you've got an impartial reader, it's always a good idea to ask an impartial reader if they can understand what you've said, if they can read through your application. If they can understand it and it's coming across clearly to them, then you're definitely on the right track. It's going to be clear to the assessment panel. Next slide, please. So this just looks at the evidence a bit more. I've said about saying it and proving it, not making unsubstantiated claims. So essentially the application is similar to a business case. So evidence should qualify the proposal. It makes the problem real. It makes the innovation credible. It makes it plausible. So these are just some examples of evidence of how you could pitch evidence. But where you're making any kind of claim in your application, it's a really simple example, but if you're saying something is the best, you need to say why it's the best and back that up with data. It's really important because an assessor is just going to think, well, how do you know that? Where has that come from? So it's really important to bring that data in and to rationalise what you've said. Next slide, please. Again, there's just some more examples there of bringing in evidence. So the main point really is that every claim should prompt that question in your mind when you're writing. So how do you know that? And if you can't answer that, then you are likely to get a score. As I say, as an assessor going through a submission, everything that is claimed is going to be questioned, and if there's not any evidence or substantiation, they are unlikely to take it on face value. So really, evidence, I can't stress enough how important it is to bring that in and make sure that that's strong all the way through all your responses. Okay, next slide, please. So the project description, and so although it's not scored in this competition, it will often be the first thing that an assessor reads. It's also a public description. So one key element is obviously not to give away anything that is too commercially sensitive. But what it should do is clearly state the problem that you're addressing. It can describe the type of innovation, but again, it doesn't need to describe the full solution. Explain what the project will do, but not necessarily how every element works. And it can give a signal of potential impact and value. So it needs to be clear, but obviously it's not about full disclosure because it is public. Next slide, please. So, as I said, it's the thing with the project description is it's public, so don't reveal IP, and Innovate UK assessors don't need full disclosure to assess merit either. So you can strike a balance there, and there's some examples there of how to strike a balance between being clear but not obviously giving away IP in the project description. So be specific enough to be credible, but high level enough to protect your IP, I think, is the key element there. Okay, so if we move on to looking at question 12. So question 12 asks about the problem. So this is proving that there is a need. So what problem does your solution remove? How do you know that exists? So focusing on the issue that your solution overcomes and not on the solution itself at this stage. I think this is a mistake again that a lot of bidders make in terms of going straight to the solution, and it's like taking a step back from that and clearly articulating the problem. So a strong answer will make clear how the problem has emerged. So is it changes in behaviour? Is it regulation? Where has the problem come from? And who experiences this problem? Who's the customer, or what system is affected? And what's the potential impact of the problem? So the time, the cost, the risk, the inefficiency. What impact is this? What issues is this problem causing? What evidence shows that this is a real problem? Is it customer insight, data, observed behaviour? How can you evidence that there is a real problem? So, could someone understand the problem without ever seeing your solution? I think that's the key test, and it takes it back from the solution. Just ask yourself that question. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so question 20, which looks at market size. Again, this is another question where it needs some focus to get a high scoring answer. So with question 20, they're really asking you to look at two different things. So they want you to talk about your total addressable market. So they're asking you to consider all your possible customers. So for question 20, I think it is worth sometimes brainstorming who your possible customers are. It could be manufacturers, license holders, the end user. Will it be available for the end user to buy directly? You could have a solution that covers several different several different target customers. So what is your total addressable market? And think to score highly, you need to be able to put some kind of value on that total addressable market. What's the potential there? But then also, Innovate UK are interested in what is actually realistic. What's your serviceable, obtainable market? How much could you actually achieve realistically given the stage that you are in terms of commercialisation? So what is that realistic, serviceable, obtainable market? And again, this comes back to evidence and demonstrating that you know that you've got that knowledge, you know who the total addressable market is, and you know realistically what the smaller serviceable obtainable market is. Can we go on to the next slide on market size, please? Thank you. So there's just some examples here again of what good evidence might look like on question 20 in particular. I mean, this is obviously general. You know, we're not actually focusing on a real solution, but there's numbers in there that do give substantiation. So 120 UK manufacturers, licensing at 50k per manufacturer, which gives an initial opportunity of 6 million, and then other potential customers downstream. So quantifying a gap, again, there's figures there. Clinics currently spend 8 to 12k per year managing the issue. So common pitfalls with this question do tend to be stating large markets without calculations, ignoring secondary revenue streams, and describing users without valuing them. So there is quite a lot to think about on that question, but I think it is one that's definitely worth investing some time in to fully brainstorm and try and bring some data together to get a high score. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to look at question 23 now, which is risk. Again, Sally-Ann mentioned earlier, I think, as an assessor, this is a question that we see people struggling with quite a lot. So Innovate UK, they do expect you to identify, own and manage risk. So you could start by talking about your risk assessment process. And I think one of the key things to say with risk is showing a clear overview of risks shows that you have thought about your proposal and you've thought about where things might go wrong, and you're actually showing how these could be addressed. So you're not going into something blindsided. I think it's unrealistic. When you see submissions with not many risks in, it tends to give the impression that the bidder hasn't really thought about risk in its full sense, and it's not realistic to not have any risks. So higher scoring responses will have strong evidence-based rationales again for mitigating risk. So you could refer to 2 risk registers again to give this more weight. So a project risk register, so covering risks that are specific to delivering this project that you're applying into the competition to fund, and a wider company risk register that shows that you have thought about the separation of corporate risk and project specific risk. Also shows where dependencies sit between the two. Can we have the second slide on this, please? Thanks. So examples of risks, as I said, so project level risks could be things like technology doesn't perform as expected, integration with existing systems is more complex, subcontractors could cause delays, and then company level risks would be more things like loss of the key staff, cash flow pressures, reliance on a small number of suppliers or partners. But what they really want to see, as I said, is how you will mitigate those, what processes you have in place to mitigate those risks. So you have thought if a staff member lets you down, what is your backup plan? If the results of a pilot are not as you expected, what's plan B, what's your next move? So it's just about thinking about these risks comprehensively, and then documenting that clearly in the question and showing that you can move forward if an issue arises, and it's not going to be a stumbling block, because obviously then that is a risk to the funder, that they're going to put money into something that is going to come to a halt if an issue arises.
And also try and show yourself still in a good light, that there's no risk there that's going to completely destroy the project, but you show it in a good light, that you've thought about the risks and that you've got a plan. And in fact, you could say, well, the risk might be that we grow too quickly. I mean, that's turning it on its head, that we grow too quickly and because it's so popular, so that we have to have controls in place to make sure we grow at a steady pace. That's something that can show you in a positive light, so try and still make it positive. Okay. Well, then I think it's over to me.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Laura. Okay. We're running a little bit short on time, so I didn't want to miss out finance because I know it does cause some issues. I wouldn't get too hung up and too stressed about it. It's only £75,000. Doesn't have to be that detailed, but as accurate as possible, because many people, their finances won't be that accurate. So if you can make it accurate and credible and have the actual salary amounts, know how much people are being paid with their on costs and their pension and their PAYE and whatever, and know what specific materials cost, if you can be accurate about it, that will really show that you know what you're talking about. So these are the kind of costs that you can claim. Most of it will probably be salaries, ideally for more than one person, so that it's not just one founder receiving a salary, but that you might have other staff. Ideally, you have team members. And these are the things that you can claim for. These are the direct costs. And then could we have the next slide for indirect? Or you can apply for overhead costs as well, but try and show how you've calculated them, so that if you're using one office in a big office suite, just make the costs apportioned to that particular room, or to those specific tasks, rather than just putting in a global amount for someone. If they work 5 days a week, but they're only working for you one day, then just put in the 1 day a week. So the type of things that ideally you would be claiming for would be staff salaries, product development if you're still developing the product, further development to the product, prototyping and testing the product, further testing, market evaluation, so evaluating the market, doing testing, feedback, market feedback, those kind of things, marketing activity, media, communication, branding, press, media, and partnership activity, finding new partners if you need new partners, and business planning, marketing plans, all those kind of things are relevant and acceptable costs. So I say don't get stressed and hung up about it, but try and be specific, and that will also inform your proposal. If you know what costs you're applying for, well, that's the activity that you put into your delivery plan and your milestones. Okay, next, bringing it all together. Right, okay. You've gone through all of that. You've got all your answers. This is just a check then that you've done everything at the end that you need to do. I did want to put a note in here, this might be a little bit controversial, but about the use of AI in bid writing, which I know is controversial, and I know a lot of people will think about using it. As scorers, we do see people using AI a lot, and it is fairly obvious when it's being used to write a bid. So I would just urge some caution, and also a caution that obviously anything you put into an open AI model is then not confidential. So I would really be careful about using AI and feeding information up into AI. But I would say you can use it to get a structure of a question, to get ideas for how you might structure a question, what you might say. You can use it for research. Definitely use AI for research, but be very careful about getting it to write the content, because it will be fairly obvious. So I think you need to be, and it's not a lot of words, so it shouldn't take too long. Be clear about the problem you're solving, why it matters, how it reduces uncertainty for the market, and how valuable it is, even at the R&D stage. Using evidence throughout, keep the theme going all the way through, keep saying that, the same things without being overly repetitive, but if they might miss it the first time, make sure that it's still in there at the end so that they're left with a positive message. And yeah, draft offline and allow time to refine it. Next slide, please. The assessors are on your side. They want innovators. They want you to be successful. So they are on your side. They will be trying to be positive rather than critical. They want to see people get through. So these are just some next steps. And I'm kind of thinking in terms of, yeah, where do you start? Where do I start with all of this? Start with something that you enjoy and find relatively easy. If you find finance difficult, don't jump in with that. If you find describing the product easy and nice, then start with that. Start with something, just start somewhere. You can always go back and change it if you're editing offline. Just try and get words on paper. Don't sit there thinking about it. Just get some words down and you can always edit it later. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's our contact details. That's who we are. I hope you found this useful. I think everything will be emailed out to you. If you've got further questions, I think Laura Hill is going to take you through now support that might be available for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally Ann and Laura King. So it's a bit confusing with two Lauras on the session today, but no, really, yeah, great to cover everything that you did within the time frame we gave you today. That's been really helpful, and of course, as we said, we'll get those slides and recording of the session out to all those that registered today. So hope that does really help those people on today's call that are applying into the fund. Innovate UK. We'll put the links in the chat bar for the fund, but also for the selector we spoke about that Innovate UK have. They've run a number of briefing sessions, which we can put the link to the recordings into the chat bar or to the Q&A bar as well around those. But so Innovate UK have run different briefing sessions on the funding call. But what we really wanted to do today was to give you a bit more than the mechanics of filling out that form, is that insight from experts who are supporting businesses in applications and also have that experience as assessors as well for various different organisations. That sort of inside knowledge we wanted to impart to everyone on the call today to give you a bit more understanding about how to approach this application or any other applications that you might approach in the future. So I really hope that session there has been helpful for you. Now, I just wanted to talk to you about the programme that we run to support innovative businesses across Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex. I know a number of you on the call today are already on our programme, but for those, and so it'd be a useful reminder for the service which we run, which is all fully funded. But for those of you that have keyed into this webinar today and perhaps haven't heard about our services, I wanted to give you an overview of what we do and why we do it and how we work. So I hope you've got a few minutes today to stay on the session and listen to that. And then so I'll be going through that very quickly with you all. And if you've got any questions about the programme afterwards, you're more than welcome to come back to us with any questions on our service. And then we'll be taking some Q&A questions. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this session today, picking up on any particular questions that you might have for Sally Ann, Laura, or myself on the programme. So I'll move forward with my overview on the programme. So I'm Laura Hill. If you didn't catch that at the beginning of this session, my background is working in innovation. I've secured innovation myself from Innovate UK in the past, and I've managed Innovate UK funding projects in the food industry, and therefore I really understand the benefits that innovation funding can bring to businesses and how to secure innovation funding firsthand. I'm now passionate about supporting businesses in the region to the path to secure innovation funding into their business. And I project manage this support service across the region. So the Innovation Grant Mentoring Programme provides free business innovation support. So if you have an innovative business idea and want to understand how to secure innovation funding for your business to accelerate an R&D project in its route to market, and you would value and you want to secure funding and would value support, we can work with you. You need to be willing and to engage with our team of innovation experts, but we're more than happy to connect with you and to sort of find out how we can support you and advise you around on the next steps of our programme. Innovation funding is for researching and developing new products and services, and this project supports businesses applying in for grants from funding streams such as Innovate UK or any other sector relevant innovation funding organisation. The grants go towards supporting innovative businesses and can range from thousands to millions of pounds, which really enables businesses to accelerate their innovation and therefore their route to market. Bids into these competitions aren't always easy and they're very competitive. The Women in Innovation Award, which we've been spotlighting today, is a very competitive call. But as we said in the session earlier, you've got to be in it to win it. And the applications themselves are quite often quite long and complex. And therefore our project's mission is to increase awareness and support businesses on the route to innovation funding, helping to increase the number of successful applications from businesses within Essex, Norfolk and Suffolk, where we provide this service. So what do we offer businesses on our programme? By application, we offer fully funded one-to-one mentoring and bid writing coaching. This is from our team of experts. Sally Ann and Laura King are both on our list of experts that we engage businesses with. All our experts have been successful in winning innovation funding or know how to write innovation funding bids, and they know what it takes to achieve that grant. The mentoring support we provide is in depth, and it offers you training on how to analyse and write successful applications. And it will not only assist you with what the project you're working on at the moment or the bid you're developing at the moment, but also give you the skills and confidence to complete grant applications in the future. The support we provide is really flexible, and we can support you from the stage you're at now on the route to innovation funding success. And if you're not quite ready to apply for innovation funding but have a fantastic innovative idea, we also have our early stage concept support, which is delivered by our mentors, which can then lead on to funding assistance. So those of you on the call today that are interested, obviously, in understanding more about innovation funding, not applying into the Women in Innovation Fund, but if it's something you are looking to move forward in the near future with your business, it's still really important to connect with us and for us to talk about how we could potentially support you moving forward into this arena. You don't have to be focusing on a particular application to engage with our programme support. I'd say we prefer to engage with businesses that are thinking of, because we're applying into funding, because then we can, as a public funded service, we have an application process, and it then enables us to engage with you and to talk through how we best support and to get you onto the programme, and then work with you in a timely manner up to these funding calls arising. And we can also advise you on the right types of funding calls to apply into. On the programme, we also provide innovation funding webinars and workshops. So obviously today is an example of one of our funding webinars, and we focus on different general topics or dive down into a particular funding call that's open, as we're doing today. So who we work, just back there, who we work with. We work with any innovative business in Essex, Norfolk and Suffolk from any sector, any industry sector. We work with SMEs, so a business needs to have between 1 and 250 employees, and a senior team open to external support. We work with businesses new to innovation funding, businesses that need support towards with their innovation funding proposals that maybe they've won funding in the past, and have a proposal from what they've worked on before, but want to now approach different funding calls and want support with that, so we can support there. But we've also worked with businesses that maybe haven't been successful in the past in achieving innovation funding grants, but are looking to apply to funding calls in the future and want to be ready for live calls coming up. And we can support them as well. So we've got a range of ways to support businesses at various different stages in their innovation journey. I'll give you a very quick overview of a case study of a business that we've worked with on the programme, and we want to leave some time for Q&A, so I'll just go through this very briefly. So we've worked with a business called Senai, based in just outside Norwich. They had previously won a small Innovate UK grant, the Fast Start grant, but were then searching for further funding and wanted some advice and came across our programme. They connected with us, and we got them onto the programme. They applied in for our one-to-one support and they were approved for that, and we assigned them an innovation mentor. And the innovation mentor looked at where they're at in terms of what they're doing and supported them building their proposal for future innovation funding. We saw a competition come up. It was an Innovate UK environmental monitoring programme, which was very relevant to the area in which they were, their innovation project. We helped them identify this and then assigned a bid writing coach to them alongside their innovation mentor and worked on that particular funding call. This was quite a large grant and they were working with 3 project partners as well, and the project as the business, they won a grant of 448,000 with around 230, I think, thousand going to Senai, with the other funding amounts going to the partners which were working on this project. So that was a huge fund for them. A previous grant they'd won from Innovate UK was a £50,000 grant. So for them, and having that support from our team of experts to be able to upskill them in approaching a smaller grant compared to that larger grant was huge for them. And they work with optical sensors, and they were looking at how those sensors could identify microbes in water and identify particular chemicals. This was then going to be put into the water, but it's being tested through the project at the moment to be put into waterways. So if successful, the Environment Agency will look at using this kit across the UK to improve the water quality within the rivers. So what Innovate UK funding has enabled that optical sensor business. Their sensors are currently being sold for aquariums. So quite a different area that they're looking at moving these sensors into, but Innovate UK and the funding there has really allowed them to do that, and working with our experts really gave them the confidence. So we worked with Kat at Senai, and it gave her that confidence in approaching this funding call, and not one that they'd identified themselves into moving forward with. So that's just an example of one of the companies we've worked with on the programme in the past. So on the programme, we've been running for 5 years now, and we've supported over 400 businesses with our webinars and workshops. And we've worked with 80 businesses receiving that one-to-one support, which I mentioned is all fully funded. To date, we've supported funding into the region, successful funding into the region of at a value of 3.1 million. So we have those experts that have supported some huge bids into the region, and we're very keen to connect with other businesses that would be interested in our services. So please do reach out if you have any questions. So moving forward to the next section of our webinar, we'd like to take some questions, and Helen in our team will be supporting us on this bit. Helen, I know I've got all my presentation screens up at the moment and I can't see the Q&A bar. Have we got any questions through which we can help people on the call with today, please?
Yes, we do have a few questions. I think most of them have been covered in the presentation, but it might be helpful just to reiterate them. So the first one was around, do I need a fully developed product to be able to apply for this fund?
I know you were talking about that at the beginning, Sally, and do you want to pick up on that? Is that okay?
Doesn't need to be fully developed. It needs to have a prototype.
It needs to be late stage with a minimum viable product or prototype or early customer interest. So it's late stage research and development, not fully developed. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thanks, Laura. I think it brings in the fact that it's for this particular funding call, it's late stage. Some of the Innovate UK funding calls are sort of asking for or do accept more early stage developments, but for this particular funding call, Women in Innovation Fund, they're looking for those businesses that need that sort of later stage testing. It's not an early concept idea. There has been some work and a minimal viable product sort of developed around that, and obviously some testing from that. But this fund will enable further testing to prove that your innovation has potential to commercialise.
So it's not final. It's developed. You have a solution, but it might still need some tweaking.
Yeah. Which is why you're looking for the funding.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Helen? Have you got any further questions?
Yep, so I've got another one. Will the assessors read the non-scored questions like the project description?
Laura, do you want to pick up on that? Because I know.
Yeah, so yes, I think the answer is, as I covered in the presentation, the non-scored questions are there to add, create the bigger picture, add context. So we can't obviously guarantee which order the questions are read in by the assessor, but one thing that we would definitely recommend is to answer each question carefully. As I say, those non-scored questions will help to set context, but keep the key evidence for the scored questions. Okay.
Thanks, Laura. Helen, have we got any other questions for today?
I've got a few more that were received in advance of the meeting. I haven't received any as a result of from today's attendees. So I guess it depends on how far you want to carry on the Q&A. I can feed another one in the meantime, though, which is.
We've got a few more minutes, so
yes.
I think it's all this discussion is obviously I think it's helpful for businesses to hear. So if we've got a couple which were submitted before the session, that's great to bring to the table. Yes, please, Helen.
Okay, I've just had a live one in actually as well, so we'll go with that one. Can it combine with another fund, i.e. the Arts Council grant?
So can the Women in Innovation Fund be combined?
Yes.
You're applying to Innovate UK for the 75,000. So yes, if for the particular project, it might be that you've used Art Council funding to initially develop the idea, and then from that you can. I think. Please come in, Sally Ann and Laura. But where in the bid where you've received other funding money to support the development of that, it's probably worth bringing in to say that the Arts Council believed in me, and they gave me that funding to initially develop the MVP, the minimal viable product, and now we're looking for further funding to test that product from Innovate UK. I think that would sort of work quite well, wouldn't it, Laura?
Yes.
I think the main thing with that will be the amount of the grant and the declaration on the minimum financial assistance. So just need to be conscious of the amount of public funding received over the past 3 years, that it doesn't exceed the 315,000. And one thing another thing that they've been quite clear on is that the finance section in this competition only includes the finances that are applicable to the 75k. So if there is other leverage, say whether you might have volunteer time in your project, you can talk about that in your responses, but don't include other funding in your finance section either.
Yeah, so you can mention it in the written questions that you've got other grant money, but not include it in the finance section. So
yeah, I think
it would be a positive thing.
Yeah,
thank you. And I think we've heard of businesses that in the box where you type that the funding, the figures all add up, and if it's 1 penny over that 75,000, the computer says no and rejects it because you're asking for more than the grant. So you've got to be really careful that the figures typed in are under that 75,000, otherwise it gets automatically rejected without your application being reviewed by an assessor.
Yeah, which when you've put all that work into it, you really don't want one small mistake to exclude you.
Yeah. Helen, I think if we got any other key quick questions, we've got about another 2 minutes. Otherwise, we can always pick up on those additional questions that should come through with people offline.
Okay, I can put one more in, and I think it is quite important, and it's around how can I make 300 words meaningful.
I'll leave that with Laura or Sally.
Okay.
Sally Ann.
Okay, so I think the approach is that you need to treat it as valuable space. Don't see it as a constraint. So start with the structure. Use the question subpoints as headings. Allocate words deliberately. So if there are 3 bullet points or 3 subpoints, it's roughly 100 words for each subpoint. So be specific but not descriptive. So one quantified example, for instance, that will score a lot higher than several general statements. Don't go down the sweeping general statements, lots of language route. So clearly say what, clearly say who, clearly say how much, why it matters, be really specific. And evidence, again, can't emphasize the evidence point enough, but that beats explanation. So short factual statements backed by data, insight, assumptions. Avoid long explanations essentially, and focus on what scores. So don't go into background that doesn't answer the question. Try not to go off on a tangent. If it doesn't earn marks, it's costing you space. So a test really for that 300 words, and is it meaningful? Are you answering the question? Does every sentence support a potentially scoring point? So those points that I mentioned in the question, just keep checking back to those, and are you answering them?
And
that's the main thing.
Just cut out waffle.
Yeah, waffle. Get rid of
waffle. And if I suppose in the scored questions, if you're too long on a scored question, you could cut out some detail and put it into an unscored question if you're not sure. So don't write more than you need to, because just if it's too long, cut it out and put it in somewhere else, but make sure you've cut out waffle, because most things can be said in a much more condensed way if you really try.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good question to conclude with. Thanks ever so much, for taking those questions, and thanks to Helen for organising that part of the webinar. So we'll bring the webinar sort of coming to the end of this session time now. I really hope that the session's been helpful for you, especially for those of you that are applying into the fund. For those that are interested in our programme, please go to our webpage for further details on this programme and our support. And from there you can register for the programme and we'll be in contact. Otherwise, contact us on the email address here on the screen. We have a feedback form about today's webinar session. Please do click onto the QR code on the screen here and let us know your thoughts on the session and how valuable it was today for you. Helen will also put that in the Q&A, the link to it in the Q&A bar for you to key into. Really appreciate any feedback you have on how we've delivered what we've delivered today to you. But thank you very much for attending the webinar today, and best of luck to those that are applying into the Women in Innovation Fund. Do let us know how you've progressed with your application, and if you have any questions around the programme and the support we provide, please do get in touch with us. Thank you very much for your time today. Have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you.